Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited for my conversation today. John, would love to have you start off by telling us who you are and what you do in the events industry.
Yeah, definitely. John Kazarian. I'm the CEO and founder of Accelevents. We are an event management platform to facilitate the entire lifecycle of an event, from event websites and registration through on-site badge printing, mobile app for attendees, even virtual events. And I've been at it 11 years now.
Amazing. Yeah, you're one of the OGs, I feel like, in event tech, like an event tech that was actually made for conference management, not just ticketing, that's now being bought up by other event management
We've
software.
seen a lot of that in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's interesting because there is like a tipping point, I think, of when a company has decided, okay, we're doing an event, and the tipping point between when do you just need a form because you just need to like know name and email, to when you need something that's full blown. So maybe we can start there. Like how do you think that event planners, when they're planning out their tech, really should think about it so that they're using tech in a way that is logical, that doesn't feel cumbersome to their attendees, and is also not just tech for tech's sake?
Yeah. So I think, like most things, you should start to do things yourself first, and often that means hacking things together. A lot of our customers are coming from another platform, usually one of the legacy ones in the industry, but a handful of them are also coming off of something like Google Forms or using Forms in their CRM. There is a couple of catalysts for when they realize they've outgrown that. One piece of it could be something like needing agenda management or a mobile app or badge printing on site. Another could be something like group registration, which just becomes really cumbersome to facilitate within, say, a CRM. And there's another part, which is as companies grow and they add more layers of bureaucracy and steps and checks, the event marketers end up getting pushed out of using the marketing automation systems and the CRMs with admin control, or even the CMS for the website. And that's where they basically need their own platform to live within so they can do everything they need and have full control over that experience.
Yeah, and I think coming from an event marketer background, it's so difficult to have your marketing ops or sales rev ops, whoever, whatever they're called in your organization, really understand what you're looking for in an event tool and why that's different than just like, again, sometimes name and email and dietary restrictions is all you need if it's a simple like 1 day program, no tickets, like free to attend. But once you get more complicated than that, and you want to start tracking what people are doing and what people are doing throughout the event, like how is it that you're able to actually do that in a way that isn't just an Excel spreadsheet, especially when you get into hundreds and hundreds and thousands of attendees, right? You can't be doing that all manually.
Absolutely. And different registration levels and paid versus unpaid tickets and discount codes, all of that just becomes way too cumbersome to do through a standard form solution. The other side of it is that you'd be starting from scratch with all of those processes,
Yeah.
where a dedicated event management platform like Accelevents, it's essentially opinionated in the way that it's built. I mean, it's built for the workflows that event organizers go through. Obviously with giving enough flexibility that they can modify it for their event, but there's a starting point, so you're not reinventing the wheel at every step.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'd love to talk about a bit of like trends around registration because it sounds like so simple. You're like, have people tell you they're coming to your event. But I think that, you mentioned event marketers kind of getting pushed out of the conversation because they're like, well, they're like, no, sales needs this, and marketing needs this, and digital needs this, and like, customer success needs this, right? And so, what are you kind of seeing around registration? Because I know one, our biggest challenge in the industry, I think, well, around registration, especially since COVID, is that people are just taking it for granted that they can register 5 minutes before the event. Partially because we're letting them. Like I laugh, like everyone's like, oh, I had 100 attendees register in the week before. I'm like, well, you left your registration open for 100 attendees, right? Like,
Right, but it's so hard to say no. Like you don't want to turn those folks away,
of
and you also
course.
don't want to give estimates to all of your vendors that you may not hit, and then have to cover that.
Yeah, and then just not having, and then that impacts your your attendee experience because either you didn't have enough swag or you don't have enough things, or now the room is too big or too small because all these people registered and people are complaining, well, I can't really see. And it's like, yeah, because
Yeah.
I had to fill in rounds that I originally were
Well,
half
so
rounds
you
two
brought up
weeks ago.
something else though, which is the attendee experience, and that
Yeah.
ties into one of those registration trends, which is
Yeah.
the folks that have duct tape together a solution using like free tools or tools they already have access to. What ends up happening is that you have this very discombobulated experience for all of the attendees, the speakers, the exhibitors throughout that entire journey. What we're starting to see is this movement towards what are essentially event engineers who design that entire life cycle of the experience that each of those different stakeholders goes through, from the first visit they have on the website or even the first email they receive informing them about the event, through registration, information leading up to the event, the building of their agenda, the check-in experience on site, the mobile app on site, the post-event survey, all those different elements where they shouldn't have to log into different platforms to interact with all of that. They shouldn't have different brand exposure throughout each of those different pieces. And as tech becomes actually part of the experience, there's become more and more emphasis and focus on treating it that way, the same way that you would treat decor or lighting as one of those elements of the experience.
Yeah. And I think like there is something to be said of, I understand from an event marketer and from the sales side why we want to be collecting all this information. But I remember I worked somewhere where we were collecting whether the person was a customer or not. And I said, don't we have that in our CRM? Like, why do I need to re ask this question on, like, it's just slowing people down. And like, people are like, people will fill out like an 8 or 10 question registration. It's like they're gonna lose interest. Like you need to get them quickly. Like, and how many times are you repeating something that you should already know about your attendee because your tech stack or your teams are not talking to each other, and so you're just wasting everybody's time by collecting all this information that's not actually helpful when you already have that information.
It's funny you say when your teams aren't talking to each other. Event registration designed by committee, when the teams are talking too much, is when you get a 30-question registration
Yes.
form. But when your event tech is not talking together, that's when you have a real problem. And in, say, 2023, maybe 25% of our new customers that we would onboard would have marketing ops involved in the process. Today, it's
Right.
closer to 80%. And to your point, there's so much enrichment that's coming out of their CRM that saves the length of the registration form. There's just so much information we don't have to ask because
Yeah.
we can route attendees to different forms during the registration process based on information we already have in their CRM, and really just collect the absolute requirements. And again, like any other landing page you build, treat it from a conversion rate optimization perspective.
Yeah, like why do I need to know their street address? Are we
Yeah,
mailing them something? Like if we're not mailing them something, like maybe I want to know the state, but beyond that,
maybe. Or
like
maybe you don't need to have them fill that out and we can just pull that from IP address.
right. Yeah, like there are so many other ways to get that information, and I think it starts with it being purposeful from the beginning, right? And not just this, well, we need to have some way to register people, so like let's just get a form together and then you get into the mess. Because you're right, like when you get everybody's opinion on the form, that's how you end up, well, let's ask them like if they have come to events before. It's like we know this already. Like we already know this, right?
We already have
So
this information. And then it's like, well, we could do XYZ if we had that information, but then you don't end up doing XYZ.
right, that's the other thing. Like I was talking recently to someone about like content plans, right? So when you're developing like a shot list for your photographer and videographer, you should know what's going to happen to all of that like content after the event. Because if you're just capturing it because you're like, well, we need to have a picture of every sponsor, okay, for what? So that it can sit in some Google Drive for the until the end of time. Because if you don't have a plan for it, that's what it's going to do. But if you say, oh, we're going to have a shot list of all the sponsors because we're going to
I'm
give
going to
them all
argue
this
you on the
information.
sponsor one. I think you should always have a shot list of all of your sponsors because it is the killer for half of the debates they have about, oh, well, our signage wasn't.
For sure. But then you need to have a reason, like, you need to know where is it going, right? Like, you can't just have the list to have the list. It's because, oh, we want to send out, a thank you to all the sponsors with like
Yeah.
these beautiful photos, right? It's when you just take these photos of like, oh, well, we want to get B-roll of people at the networking event. Okay, do you have a plan on what you're going to do with it afterwards? No, 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 but we need to have this B-roll, right? And the data that you're collecting is the same, right? Like, yeah, it would be great to know all of these things about all of our attendees and are they a customer and how long have they been in the pipeline, whatever it is. But if you're not actually going to action that afterwards, then you're just collecting data that's sitting in a CRM or in a spreadsheet that's not benefiting anybody and has wasted everybody's time.
Well, and this is what comes back to the concept of the event engineer, whose job to build that life cycle, and it's building the life cycle from the attendee experience or the exhibitor or speaker, but also what happens post event. How do we
Yeah.
score interactions with attendees based on what content they showed interest with at the event? Like if we've got, I'll use HubSpot as an example. They've got different product lines: CRM, service, marketing. I may have an attendee who has the sales hub but doesn't have marketing hub. I want to identify that they went to a whole bunch of marketing hub sessions, score interest in that, and then kick that over to their account manager.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can easily design in advance and set up the scoring around. But yeah, you have to be intentional about that.
Yeah.
One of the elements of that is it's basically metadata. You're capturing that information without making any ask of that attendee. They're not having to fill out more information. They kind of just show up and do what they wanted to do anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. And using that information in a way that's logical, right? And like you said, having that plan after the fact to say, okay, we know that they attended all these things. What does that follow-up look like versus someone who didn't, or versus someone who said they were going to go to all these breakouts and never went to any of the breakouts? And like, why is that happening? Is that because the content wasn't resonating? Was it because they got too into something else? Is it because they went to a bunch of different other sessions that maybe they didn't realize what they were? Like, that data is all very valuable, but again, you have to have that plan of, okay, this is how we're going to analyze it, and this is who's going to be responsible for analyzing it, and this is what's going to happen to it afterwards.
Exactly.
So yeah, so you talked a lot about like the event engineer. I'd love to like dig into that a little bit more, because there's so many terms, like, the producer, the manager, the like experience, like, and I think we're always refining what that means. And sometimes I'll have conversations with people and they're like, oh, we're looking for X, Y, and Z. And then they're listing it out and I'm like, oh, that's what I do, but I wouldn't call myself that, right? Or that is what I call myself, but that's not what I do, right? So like, talk to me about like the concept of an event engineer and how that is different or the same to like an event manager, producer, like more traditional titles that we see in the events industry.
There are a lot of titles in the event industry, and there's a massive overlap between them, right? Like traditional Venn diagram might have 20% overlap. I think in events, like their management just assumes that everybody under events is going to be able to do everything and has capacity and time to do everything, which is like the first problem that we need to change.
Yeah.
Event marketers, their workload's really divided into two pieces. There's everything that goes into what happens at the actual event. And then there's everything that goes into getting people to the event and what we do with all the information that we capture from the event. And where the event engineer comes into play is the technology lifecycle. So building that experience on the technology side of things as if it is a component as important as decor lighting, in my opinion, biased opinion. It's more important than those things. But also, what's our attribution model for making sure that the event gets credit for the impact impression it had on attendees or the attendees generated? What's our follow-up plan post-event with all of this information? All of those different components, which, I mean, it's a full-time role in itself. We saw the same thing happen, like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago with demand gen, where marketing ops came into light, because it sort of became apparent that like demand gen has this role of both being a creative, optimizing the ad platforms, but then everything that has to do with the data management and the follow-up from each of those leads that we do capture. And the reality, these are two different roles, especially for a maturing event program where they need to be strategic about their operations.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, I think that a lot of times, and it often is dependent on the size of the team, but I've talked to so many planners event marketers that are often a team of one, right? They're a lonely island of one event marketer with everyone else who doesn't really understand their exact challenges, doesn't have, in my career, there was really only one role I had where I actually reported to an event manager, like a person who had worked in events. Everyone else was, VP of marketing, VP of sales, and so everyone was just like, yeah, Shenandoah, she just does all the things with the events, right? And it's like, okay, but I don't have time, and I'm not a marketing ops person to know how to score this properly and then get it over to, I know we need to have follow up with demand gen, and we need to have follow up with all of our team, and our sales team and our customer success team should know how these people are interacting at the event, but how are we actually distributing that information, and how is it standardized, right? Because that also is the biggest challenge on the marketing ops side, is scoring, right? And I think maybe there's a science to it, but so much of it feels like just throwing darts at the wall and saying, okay, this is the number for a webinar, and this is the webinar or the number for an in-person event, and all of these things. And then it's like, okay, well, why does 2 webinars equal less than or more than an event, or it's just figuring out the scoring when we know that events are such a high indication of intent and connection to the brand.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, there are also such a large component of spend in the marketing budget. And because of that, there's a lot of scrutiny. It's the first thing that CFOs go after. Let's be real. CMOs are always defending the event program if they believe in it, and hopefully they do. But events are constantly on the defensive.
Yeah.
And there's very rarely the investment to show, here's the ROI, here's how we measure attribution on events, here's the first party data that we're getting out of, and here's how we're acting on it. And I don't fault event marketers for that, because there's 1,000 other things that they need to be focused on leading up to the event. It's a lot, to defend why we didn't have water at the event than it is to defend why we didn't have an email follow-up campaign after the event. There's things that are going to come first. That's the reality.
Yeah, it is the challenge. And you're right. I know, having been in the industry over 15 years, it's always the first to go, during the lockdowns. It's well, they'll never come. Events are never going to come back. Everyone's just going to stick on Zoom. Why would we ever go in person again? And it's okay, just kidding. You can't get a venue in the city,
Right.
for anything, right? But, and we keep proving time and time again. And I also think that as so much is focused on digital and AI and that kind of content creation, which has its place, events are going to they're going to circle back around. We always circle back around, right? We always circle back around.
I think we saw that really turn around halfway through 2025, where everybody realized that the most powerful way to get away from the AI slop is to own your narrative and own it in person.
Yeah, because you can't fake it, right?
Can't fake it.
It's either happening or it's not.
Right.
There's no way around it.
Now, that said, you can also burn your brand doing it wrong.
Yeah. We have lots of examples of that, right? There's so many times that a brand does it poorly. And I also think so many times it's because they're doing it for themselves. I always would ask and challenge executives when working with them of, okay, yeah, your content sounds great, but why does an attendee care? I know why you care, and I know why the team cares, but why does an attendee want to get on an airplane and spend $300 or $500 or whatever the ticket cost is, have time away from their family? Why, right? And I always say, if your event is just content, it could have been a webinar, right?
I was about to say the same thing. Content
if you're just standing on stage, talking,
with some exceptions, there are people that are great storytellers that can represent your brand, and it doesn't resonate the same way online that it does in person.
Right.
And it also leads to, okay, so there's this keynote, this narrative, this story that's told, and then everybody goes and they're in line to get a coffee, or they're at the cocktail reception that night, and the conversation continues, and it just reinforces that message that was discussed. Again, that doesn't happen online.
Yeah, exactly. And it is that those third places in the event. I think it's like kind of what I've seen people calling it, the lineups, the elevator, right? Like how many times have you
Yeah.
been in the elevator chatting with someone, or the lobby bar, like the not even structured, like yes, the cocktail reception attached to the event, but the places in between where, especially if you're in a smaller city, like I used to work for a company that they had a huge event in Louisville, and you could tell that like it was a citywide of Louisville. So almost everyone you saw like at the airport in and around the city was going to this event,
I
right?
wear my badge until I get on the plane
Right.
through the airport. And the number of people that I've had conversations with as a result of that, like it's some of the best conversations I've had.
Yeah. Those are usually your best ones, like the ones that are not as forced. It's the like in betweens, right?
Right.
And I think like it is like being clear on how what that why is, and bringing people into that so that your brand is stronger, and also not doing events just to do events. Like I had this conversation with a friend of mine who was on a committee, and they had an event that they declining numbers, like to be honest, like the ticket I think was too expensive for the demographic. It just like the event wasn't aligned to their attendees and what they were trying to do. And he's like, well, no offense, like I just don't want to do an event to do an event. I'm like, it's not offensive to me. It's offensive to me to do an event just because you've always done the event, right? Like that's not being true to the purpose and honoring your attendees in a thoughtful way.
Well, just like a product manager in software has to be able to say no to a feature idea, the head of events, the event team, the event engineer needs to have the data to say, hey, this event isn't serving our mission. We're going to kill this event within our program and shift that budget and effort elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I know we don't have that much time left, but I do want to talk about apps,
Yep.
because there's like anything, like everything in the events world, there's a lot of debate on the value of the app, right? And how do you make it valuable? How do you make it sticky? How do we ensure that it's actually useful? And I'm sure like the short answer is go in with a plan. But like, what are you seeing that's like really resonating with people, and people who are really having success in app adoption, app usage throughout the event, even after the event? Like what are those winning use cases for the app, and how is it being done now?
Yeah. Part of it's hitting a critical mass. So when everybody's in there, you get more engagement, it becomes more valuable. We have one customer, in order to check into the event, you have to take out your phone, show the QR code in the app. That's what's scanned, not a QR code from your email, but the QR code in the app. That gets them 100% app adoption.
Right.
So that's a great place to start. They also print headshots on the badges. So now people upload their headshot through the app. Everybody has a headshot. So it makes the networking component automatically feel more personal. You see people in the app and you see them face to face, and you can start that conversation. Some of the other components that we've seen customers do, they'll have exclusive experiences that you can only sign up for within the app. So these different tools in advance of the event start date that lead to adoption and get people in there. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy where once you get people in there, then the usage and engagement does occur. The hardest part is having enough value or something that is going to drive them to actually get in there in the first place.
Right. Yeah, because I think, if it's just the agenda, the one event that I've done where we had really high app adoption was technically not the only way, but it was definitely the easiest way to register for breakouts. And, doing it the other way was much more cumbersome. We were not using Accelevents, we were using another very big cumbersome event tool, but that was high because there was a reason for people to be in it. And I might even argue, the way that you said, not everyone needs to have a dedicated event tool. Sometimes it does make sense to start like from the beginning. I think also not everything needs an app, and right, and just not having that app to have the app. Like if your app is just an agenda, like who cares, right? Like I can get that online, like that's already there. But like you said, if there's things I can sign up for, if there's really, and it is that critical mass, right? Because if I go in there and nobody has filled out their profile, nobody has their LinkedIn in there, nobody, like it's just a bunch of like the little gray, cartoon of the person, right? Like that's not, it's like, okay, it's like going to like a lame party, right? It's really about having clear reasons for having it, and like your event engineer or whoever from the beginning, middle, and end of your reg process, your event website, like how is that laid out? Even like we didn't even get into all that of like what information really needs to be there and what information is just noise, and like how do you organize it in a way that's easy to follow. Do you know how many times I go to an event website and there's no date or location?
I
Or
posted about this before. It is mind-boggling.
so I'm like,
There's also this issue where so many events build their website for returning event attendees,
right.
as if, you know, and then a new attendee, like I'm looking at an event like that I might be interested in. I can't find any information about the event. Who does it serve? When is it? Where is it? Why should I go? It's like I had to have gone for the past 15 years to be eligible to register for it. Or not even eligible, like you want me there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is where you can really lean on, you know, the phone a friend of like send your event website to someone in your company that it's in like finance or engineering that is not involved at all, that so that they can pick out.
Send it to your parents, send it to your kids. Like, what is this event about?
What is this event about? Where is this event? Right? Like, because it's so easy to miss, especially when you're living in the details for so long.
One of the other things I was going to mention from an app adoption perspective that we've been seeing more and more customers do is have their exhibitors put offers in the app. And sometimes these are like worth real cash value. Like we've seen some crypto platforms put in like a $250 credit if you sign up, but you have to go into the app to get the promo code.
Right.
So there's different things that you can do and partner with your exhibitors and even sell them space within the app. So you're generating more revenue as the event organizer, but also encouraging and increasing adoption of the app.
Yeah, moving away from just like your logo is going to be in the app.
Right.
Great.
Right.
Who cares? Like make it interesting, make it interactive, make it like, oh, if you come into the app, like you get a special gift at our booth. Like if you come by, and then, you know, you're connecting like all of the dots. Like, and I think like, yeah, like as we're wrapping, it's really just being intentional, like beginning to end, being intentional, being like showing that why, you know, to, like you said, your new attendees as well as your past attendees. Similarly, I recently, there was a networking event happening in my area, and I was reading the description and I'm like, this is either not for me or like I think it's for me, but I don't, like I can't tell, and like the wording is too like it's too aloof, and so I'm like, nah, I think this is just not for me. And then like I'm sure I met, like, because I know people who go to it, I'm sure they'd be like, yeah, you love it. And I'm like, I don't know, like it's not clear on why I should be going. So
the thing is, if it's not clear to you, it's probably not clear to everybody else. And then inherently the attendance is going to be so broad that you're just not going to get the value because everybody else thought it was for them.
Yeah, because an event for everybody is an event for nobody, right? So, well, thank you so much for being here. Like, any final thoughts, anything, like, you know, we're kicking off the new year. Like, what do you want people to be thinking about this year as they're planning events and thinking about tech?
Continuing to treat event tech as if it is an equally important component of the experience. It's the first impression that your attendees, your speakers, your exhibitors have with your event, and it's also the last. Right.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, thanks so much for being here. Where can people find you more about Accelevents and find out about more of you online?
Yeah, definitely. So Accelevents, ACCEL events.com. I'm posting on LinkedIn almost every day. Jonathan Kazarian on LinkedIn. So send me a connection request.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.